Alright, we're back with the next phase of this bathroom remodel. I showed you the sink repair. Now I want to show you that I did in fact get the hot water heater put in here. And I'll show you the installation in just a second, but given that this is an old house, I basically had to rip took the door off, had to rip the jambs off all the way down right to the bare framing lumber to get it in there. This is a 30-gallon electric hot water heater, low end, because it's not going to get used heavy. But it was the skinniest one that I could find that wasn't also too tall. The short ones are fatter, wouldn't have gone in. Didn't need a 40-gallon or anything like that. That would have been a waste of electricity. So what I had to do is rip everything down to get it in. Not only that, my drain pipe there, my 1.5 inch drain pipe coming out of the sink, was sticking out too far as well. So what I ended up having to do is cut part of that off, put the hot water heater in, and then replace it. So I had the PVC pieces, so it wasn't too miserable to do. But now someday, if I ever have to take this hot water heater out of here, of course, then I'll have to do the same thing, I'm afraid, because I don't want to cut. This isn't necessarily weight bearing, but it is supporting. Here are a set of stairs that go up to the attic here. You can see they're fairly steep. So this is the structure that's holding the stairs in place. So I can't just cut that out, or I won't have stairs. And then the same thing on this side. This is the wall that I've already finished off for the vanity and so on, and the medicine cabinet. So at any rate, it is in, it is working. The pre-plumbing that I did helped make this a whole lot easier. Now with an electric hot water heater, you essentially have 2 plumbing connections and 1 electrical connection. Let me talk about the electric first. I had run this wire up. I don't know if you can look in one of the past videos on this. Came up from the panel box, had the breaker kept off. This is a 10-2 Romex. The hot water heater is 220 volt, 30 amp. And that's why you needed the 10 wire. 10 wire is coded for 30 amps, and then there's a 30 amp double pole breaker in the box. So basically all this is 2 wires, black and white, and an open ground, and there's a ground screw in this little compartment here that you wrap that around, and then you just pigtail the black and white wires together. There's no extra neutral or anything in that. So it was a pretty easy connection to make. Romex connector there to hold it, that it can't go anywhere. I could have used a little extra wire. I'd have preferred probably to get this up out of the way a little more, but I didn't, so it will work. Now as far as making the plumbing connections, you basically have 2 connectors here on this, and you can see they even have them color coded, blue for cold, red for hot. What they also will sell you, if you want to, with it is a connection kit, which comes with these 2 flexible hoses. They're 3/4 inch, and then they also come with 2 connectors here. They are threaded to compression, so you connect that to that, and then your pipe that's going to go from there, it's also 3/4, you compression fit in here, tighten it down good and tight. So what I did was I basically had all this assembled before I stuck it in here, so I wouldn't have to try to work up in here. You just tighten these down good so that nothing can leak, and then the same thing over here. Now I went with 3/4 because that's what it called for, but I don't need a 3/4 inch pipe supply lines, so because I only ran a 1/2 inch line up here, and there's plenty of water pressure, plenty of volume. So I used one of these reducer fittings, PVC reducer fittings, CPVC reducer fittings, 3/4 to 1/2 inch, and they're both glue. So I brought that down to the cold water line that I had coming up through there. So you can see down there that it feeds the sink, comes up through the floor, feeds the sink with the T, and then came up here. I had it capped off. Cut that off. I had to turn all the water off first, relieve the pressure from the lines. And then I put a shut-off valve, 2 shut-off valves actually. You need a shut-off valve near your hot water heater, 2 of them, so that if you should ever have to change it out or if you have a problem, you can stop the water both going in and out. So that's why I put these shut-offs on here, just 1/2 inch. You could have put, if I had more room, I could have put a 3/4 inch shut-off on here, but I didn't bother. So, and then I did the same thing then with the other line. The hot water line comes out to here. You can see the end of the flexible hose, flexible pipe, and then your compression tube threaded there, and then a piece of CPVC 3/4, and then the reducer again down to the valve. So that completed the plumbing connections there. Everything was good. There were no leaks. What I then did was turned the water on at the shutoff downstairs. I have a shutoff at the basement level for the line coming up here. Remember, I only ran a cold water line up here. That's why I'm putting this up here. I didn't want to run hot water all the way from my main hot water heater. So that brought the water up, and then I just turned on the cold, kept the hot water off, turned on the cold, and let the tank fill completely full. And then when it was full, then I turned the breaker on. You do not want to have electricity going into an empty hot water heater, or you'll burn out the elements. These things usually have 2 heating elements. You can see there are 2 doors here, one there and one there. I've never changed one out, but I think they are replaceable. That's why they have the side access. The 2 heating elements heat the water and keep it up to a certain temperature. This is a low-end hot water heater. There was no temperature control module on the top of this one to control how hot you wanted it to go. The higher end ones, or the larger ones, have different settings you can even program. I guess probably the newest ones, or even a keypad, I don't know. But you don't have to have hot water that's so hot that you'll burn yourself, you know. And it just uses more electricity. I keep my main hot water heater, I think, at about 120 degrees. I mean, that's more than hot enough for any kind of shower you know, washing your hands or whatever you're going to need hot water for. You don't need to go hotter than that for a dishwasher, because the dishwasher has its own heater in it. It'll raise it up to the temperature. I don't know if it's 180 or whatever. It depends on the dishwasher, I guess. There's probably a set on that I'm not aware of. But at 120, that's plenty of heat for the hot water, plenty of hot water, and it doesn't use as much electricity. So, but I didn't have that option with this one. I don't know what it's preset at. It'll just have to be done by feel at the faucets, you know, to get the temperature right. So that's all ready to go. Now, the other thing that I had to buy separate, a couple things I had to buy separate that don't come with it. First of all, this is your pressure relief valve. Should pressure build up higher than it's supposed to, this thing will release and discharge water out rather than the tank blow up. So, and you can see there's a pipe. This is a standard size. Came with the fitting already on it, just hand tighten, not a big deal. And then I had to cut it to get down here. On the bottom, what they always recommend with a hot water heater is a tray, just in case you have any leaks, so that it doesn't go through the whole house. And also, if this pressure, relief valve releases water, it's contained there. Now, one of the things they've done with these trays is they've put a hole with a fitting in so that you can hook a hose up to it. Now, I suppose if I was putting a hot water heater, say, in a basement or in a garage where there's a floor drain, that would be a good idea. But up here on the 3rd floor, where's it going to go? So I just bought a plug, glued it shut. If I get water in there, I can always take a towel or a sponge or something to get it out if I need to. And then, of course, here is your drain valve. Should you ever have to empty it when you're changing it out, you don't want to be moving a full hot water heater around, because it's like 300 pounds of water weight or so in there, or 200, something, depending on the size of your hot water heater. So you want to drain it first, so that, I mean, this isn't too heavy to move around when it's empty. You know what I'm saying? But you need to drain that. So that's what that's there for, if you're not familiar with it. I have never had a gas hot water heater, so I'm not going to try to give any advice about those. I'm sure they work fine too, but the electric ones I've done before, so that's what's in here. Besides, I don't have natural gas here anyhow. So the hot water heater has made it in. Now I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. I don't know how much of this old trim lumber I can salvage, or how much I'm going to have to rebuild here. Maybe I'll put some kind of more of a temporary door on there so that you can have easy access to the tank should you need it. I'm not anticipating having to do anything with it now that it's in place. The one thing I didn't put on yet, they also give you with the hot water heater, they give you these pieces of insulation, tube insulation, to put on here. And and again, that's just to save electricity. I just haven't, to keep the water temperature up, I just haven't done that yet. So the neat thing about this is, you know, here's a hot water heater, here's the sink. Guess how long it's going to take for you to get hot water when you turn the hot faucet on, this hot side of the faucet. It'll be almost instantaneous. With a hot water heater that's a bit further away, you're talking maybe 10 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. So you're running all that water through the system, using your electricity for the well pump and going through the hot water heater till you get it. The water in the lines between you and between the tank and what you're using could be however long it is, and then the water will lose its temperature as it sits there for a while, even if it's insulated. So I had looked into one of those point of use instant hot water heaters, the tankless ones. They are nice. They're much smaller than this, and their price isn't bad compared to these. But here was my dilemma. For something that I needed for here, basically hot water for 3 places. We've got the sink here, I've got a shower I'll show you in a bit, and there's another sink in another room that we've added. I had to get one large enough that could handle that, so that you wouldn't have the water go cold on you, or it couldn't keep up with demand. The little ones are good for if you just have a half bath and just need hot water at the sink. For one that would have been large enough for here, requires a 60 amp breaker. Now 60 amps is heavy duty for electricity. It's 220, 60 amps. And that's, well, just by comparison, your electric dryer is 30 amps. Your electric stove is 40 or 50 amps. So this is much larger. So you needed a much heavier gauge wire. I think it was about a 6 gauge wire I would have needed. And the cost on that, now this is about 50 feet from the panel box. So I go down 2 stories and then out along over my breezeway and over top of my kitchen ceiling to the panel box. That's the sub panel, and that's the closer one of the 2. You're talking 50 feet of 6 gauge wire. Well, the cost on that would have been just a couple $100 just for the wire because of copper prices these days. So it didn't make any sense to me to put something like that in. A 60 amp breaker is certainly more expensive than a 30 amp, and the load to the sub panel, it might have overloaded it. Because of calling for more. That's the way the tankless hot water heaters operate. They fire a huge amount of electricity into the heating elements, and it really gets the water hot quickly, so that as the water passes through the coil or whatever in there, if it comes in at 55, it goes out at whatever, 120. And it has to do that constantly while it's being called for. The tanked hot water heaters, they heat it up to temperature, then they turn off. When the water inside the tank cools down, then they turn on to heat it back up. So if you're not using it, it is technically keeping your water warm. But these things are so super insulated, it's not like you're going to lose a whole lot of heat from your water tank. And if you're somebody who's using hot water fairly regularly, there isn't that much loss because you'd be spending that anyhow. So that's why I went this route rather than the tankless. But maybe in your application, hey, you know, if you're going to put your tank right next to your panel box, if you can do that, you're only going to need a short length of wire, so that might work for you, but it didn't for me in this application. So that's it about the hot water heater. I'll come back with the next section. We'll talk about what we're doing here.